Good afternoon, everyone. I would like to welcome all of you on our brand new ECR lecture series under the INQUA HAPCOM funded Paleo Home project. The aim of the lecture series is to discuss and build synergies between scholars working specifically on the Lower Paleolithic. There will be a series of talks on different issues related to the Lower Paleolithic. I am very happy to see participants from across the globe attending this talk, and I am delighted to welcome our first speaker, Dr. Neetu Agarwal. Now I will hand over the forum to my colleagues, Dr. Prachi and Dr. Razika, who are the ECRs of this project. Over to you, Prachi.
So, hi, welcome everyone. This is me, Prachi Joshi, and
this is me, Pasika Chili. Hi, everyone.
And we are the ECRs of the Paleo Home project. So what am I going to do now is just give you all an insight into what we are trying to do and just give you the setup for this entire series. So we all know that comparative studies between lower Paleolithic assemblages and their ecological settings in key areas of Africa and India generally focuses on key questions like debates about the routes and the timings of their migrations and the evolution of the early technologies such as old one or the Acheulean complexes. So this INQUA HubCom project brings together the experts working in India, Africa, Arabia, Southwest and East Asia to address major issues related to this big out of Africa story in terms of chronology, paleo environments, and behavioral variability over the lower Paleolithic, where we will be exploring similarities as well as differences in evolutionary trajectories. As part of the same project, we are organizing an online lecture series for early career researchers working on these various aspects of Lower Paleolithic. Through this series, we are aiming to create a network between the ECRs from these various regions, and we are really looking forward to building the collaborations and greater opportunities to discuss each other's work on this platform. Now I will request Rajika to introduce our first speaker.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to this webinar, if I can say this. I present our first speaker, who is Dr. Neetu Agarwal, who is currently an assistant professor in the Department of Anthropology at Avadh Girls Degree College, Lucknow. She has completed her master's in anthropology from the University of Lucknow, okay, and she later did an international master in Prehistory and Quaternary Studies from the University of Rovira, Virgili, with the Erasmus Mundus Fellowship of the European Union. After she was awarded her PhD in Prehistory and Quaternary, the same specialty studies, in 2014 from the University of Rovira, Virgili in Spain. She specializes in Palaeolithic archaeology, lithic studies, and mainly or chiefly usewear analysis of lithic tools. She is currently working on the transition from Middle Paleolithic to microlithic technologies in the Narmada basin central of India. Small reminder to our audience that we will be recording this session. Dr. Neetu, without too much delay, we are inviting you to start your presentation about the Acheulean Lithic Assemblage from Lalitpur, Central in India. You can start, please. Neetu?
Hello, everyone. My warm regards to you, to everyone who's present in this virtual room today. At the outset, I would like to thank Paleo Home INQUA for giving me this opportunity to share my views on a very important topic today. In particular, I would like to thank Prachi, Akhilesh, and Razika for organizing this session. So The topic for today's discussion is the Acheulean Lithic Assemblage from Lalitpur, Central India. As you can see in this map here, this shows a rich distribution of Acheulean sites throughout India. Even when we looked at the sites with dates, well, we have the earliest dates from Atirampakkam at around 1.7 million years, which is roughly co-equal with Africa. Isampur with more than 1.2 million years, and Bori, Morgaon, Yadurwadi, Nevasa, all more than 800,000 years. Even Dhasi, Singhi Talao being more than 800,000 years. So this is kind of a really early Acheulean in India. But despite all this rich wealth of Acheulean sites and the early dates that we have now, India is often neglected in the discussion on Acheulean. This is mostly due to the scarcity of hominins and stratified or excavated sites, as most sites are surface or near surface sites, and very few sites have been excavated. Now, oops. Well, seems my this screen is not moving. Okay, it's moving.
Yeah, it's working.
Okay.
Yeah, it's moving.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay. So I will be zooming you out to this area. Well, to this area here in North Central India, which is Lalitpur. Okay, this is the topic for today's discussion. This Acheulean site of Lalitpur was discovered by Rameshwar Singh, where he recovered artifacts from 6 localities within a stretch of 1 kilometer on the banks of a small tributary of the Betwa River. He extensively explored this area between the interflows of the Betwa and the Shehzad, and he found tools in clusters in cultivated fields, as well as in wastelands and agricultural stretches. Now, if you look at the region, this region is part of the peninsular foreland basin with the Vindhyan escarpment, the Malwa Plateau, and the Bundelkhand granites, giving way to the marginal alluvial plain here. Now, this region is particularly important because it is affected by the northward shift of the tectonic plates. As you can see in this graphic here, as you can see in this graphic here, there's a sharp fall in the elevation of the river just as it goes through the from the Vindhyan escarpment to the granitic massif. And we see 2 sharp nick points, and this is the region where the Acheulean sites are also located. So probably affected by some kind of tectonics. Now, this is just to show you the high density of artifacts scattered here, which is roughly 21 artifacts per square meter. Now, as you can see, this is a near surface site. However, the artifacts are just recently eroded, and they were perhaps under a thicker silt cover. Okay. Now, when you see this, the outcrops of granite can be seen here, which tends to form either torus or rounded massifs, which were utilized for the production of the artifacts here. Now, when you look at, actually the real focus of this study was to understand the character of Acheulean lithic technology and its behavioral implications. But to be able to understand that, we needed to understand the site context and the formation processes as well. And so a lot of explorations were done in the adjoining regions, taking into account the regional geomorphology, lithology, and drainage basin characteristics, along with the artifact taphonomy, which gave interesting clues about site formation processes. And the second aim was to understand the technological organization of the lithics themselves. Now, during the study, we benefited by this exposed ditch at one of the localities, and we just scraped and cleaned the section, and it uncovered this Acheulean horizon overlain over a weathered saprolite. This Acheulean horizon consists of a stone zone, which is like extremely poorly sorted gravel with fine silt, which is mostly laden with Acheulean artifacts and some natural clasts. And it is covered by a polymodal, poorly sorted, fine, gravelly silt. Now, this is just to show you the close-up of the ditch section so that you can understand the artifact density and the lack of orientation and imbrication of the artifacts. Now, when we looked at the formation processes as inferred from the artifacts, we looked at the artifact size versus the natural class size. And as we can see that the artifacts, there is a clear absence of small artifacts as well as large or giant artifacts. However, small natural class are present, which suggests that there was no major winnowing or size sorting of the assemblage. Now, when we look at the weathering parameters, most of the quite a number of artifacts are heavily weathered. Mostly granular disintegration is the major weathering process, along with small-scale soil and slope processes which work on the artifacts. Now, this is just to show you some of the artifacts and the weathered granite core stone in the area. They mostly suffer from heavy granular disintegration and cracking, and many of the artifacts are really very difficult to even study. Now, most of the artifacts have relatively fresh edges with very little rounding. This indicates little transport or very slight slope movement only. The artifacts are just subjected to low degrees of patination, rounding, and there is absence of polish, which suggests that the site was not subject to long periods of surface exposure. And the homogeneous nature of patina and weathering on all the artifacts suggests that the assemblage is relatively contemporaneous. It is not a palimpsest accumulated over a long period, but it is a single coherent artifact horizon occurring as clusters in an erosional landscape. The raw material is primarily granite. As you can see here, more than 97% of the artifacts are made on granite, and a very small percentage on quartz, and just one hand axe on quartz, and very few on quartzite. Now, the granite is the local rock. This is the area of the site. So they exploited the locally weathered core stones of granite. Although very nearby you have exposures of quartzite in the Windhan escarpment, and also basalt and doleritic dikes, which were not used at all. Now, we also tried to characterize the raw material to understand if there were any raw material selection strategies, as mechanical properties, its microstructure and mineral composition affects the fracture properties of the material. Now, our thin section studies show abundant large quartz crystals with undulose extension, along with mainly potassium feldspars and very little mica. The feldspars are quite altered with kaolinization and of feldspars and demoritization of plagioclase. Now, perhaps the presence of quartz in abundance and the fine-grained texture makes it more suitable for flaking. Now, even the infrared spectroscopy results showed clear troughs for quartz and feldspar, indicating a high quantity. The XRD results also matched with the above results, as well as the SEM-EDEX results. Now, this indicates that, well, in the area, we have not just this variety of granite, we also have a coarser grained variety, but there was a deliberate selection of this finer grained quartzitic granite with lack of fissures and foliations. This was perhaps because of the higher percentage of quartz, which lent it a neat and regular conchoidal fracture, and the larger mineral grain size also increased the sensitivity to fracture. Now, in the area, we do have cobbles of granite in the gravels. However, the Acheulean knappers mostly utilized weathered core stones, which were locally available. And cobbles are not seen to have been employed at all, except as one or two simple partial cores. Now, when we look at the assemblage composition, the excavation yielded around 1,048 specimens in a trench measuring 7 into 3.5 meters, which indicates a fairly high artifact density. Typologically, they have been classified into detached pieces, which includes flake fragments, large cutting tools, and flaked pieces of cores and core fragments, and battered pieces. Now, as we have seen earlier, though the collection is from a surface site, it is still quite representative of the original industry, as the collection comprises hand axes, cleavers, flakes, cores, and fragments, and does not seem to have been selective or arbitrary, it is quite representative. And even the stage of preservation and physical condition shows that they are from a single assemblage. Therefore, this was chosen for a detailed analysis. Okay. Now, when we look at it, flakes constitute a majority of the assemblage, and with around 107 complete flakes and some 34 cores and 13 core fragments. The LCTs include mostly cleavers associated with large unifaces, knives, and scrapers. Okay, when we look at the cores form a very small percentage of the assemblage, but they still reveal very important aspects of the technology. We see varied methods of large flake blank production being used at the site. Well, there's a near absence of large or giant cores for LCT manufacture, as seen at most other Acheulean sites. Only a few cores even show large scars, which could have been suitable for LCT manufacture, with a maximum length of around 10 centimeters or more. Now, this absence of large cores may indicate a lot of possibilities, including extraction quarries, which we still need to kind of verify. Well, we do not find any Combeva cores, but we do find a large number of Combeva blanks, from which we infer that a Combeva method of blank production was heavily used at the site. Now, we find 4 cores with preferential removal. Here, the core is designed to remove one large preferential removal from the main exploitation surface, which serves as a large flake or tool blank, as can be seen here. This is a fairly standardized reduction method involving core preparation and central volume management, which implies a high technical knowledge on the part of the Acheulean knappers. Now, this, however, resulted in some loss of convexities, and so it necessitated a lot of reshaping before additional flakes could be removed. Now, we also have multifacial cores, which were nabbed using 3 or more surfaces or planes in a random or unorganized pattern. They did not seem to involve much core maintenance or platform preparation, as the platform was frequently changed. 3 such cores were recovered at the site. most of the cores are small cores which are napped using varied napping strategies. Most of the small cores are bifacially flaked, where the scar left by the previous flake removal is used as a striking platform for the next removal. This involves alternation of surfaces and core rotation. Now, within this broad schema of bifacial cores, there's a considerable variability with simple partial cores, alternate or opposed flaking, and radial exploitation, and the alternating discoid methods. We also have cores on flakes. Now, only those pieces were classified as cores on flakes from which either 3 or more flakes had been removed, or else the flake scar covered a large part of the flaking surface. There seems to be a deliberate selection of larger, wider, and thicker flakes as cores on flakes. Now, when we look at the cores vary from small to large cores. The large cores were abandoned in the early phase, and the small cores seem to have been heavily exploited. This is based on core sizes, scar count, and the amount of cortex. Now, when we compare the scar sizes on the cores and the core sizes, we see that most flakes are larger than the scar sizes on the cores. Now, this indicates two distinct chain operatoires, one geared for the production of small flakes inferred from the small cores, and one geared for the production of large flakes, for which we have missing cores, but we have the large flake blanks in abundance. Now, when we look at the core reduction strategies, these are mostly simple with use of natural convexities with minimal core preparation. Only few cores show organized preferential core strategies, but there's a remarkable homogeneity in size and morphology of end products, which suggests some core preparation geared for the efficient production of suitable large blanks for LCT production. This implies a good knowledge of fracture mechanics and high degree of napping skill, which was possibly passed down generations as a learned tradition. Now, when we look at the flakes, there's a near absence of small flakes, and almost 75% of the flakes are large flakes. So this suggests a fragmented chain repertoire, which is also inferred from the lack of cortical flakes and mostly non-cortical flake blanks, and also plain or dihedral platforms and lack of cortical platforms. Now, coming to large cutting tools, we have a fairly high percentage of large cutting tools in this assemblage, roughly 187 pieces. So this seems to be the main goal of stone napping activities here. Among the large LCTs, cleavers and cleaver flakes constitute a huge 47% of the assemblage, with the rest 12% constituted by bifaces, unifaces, knives, scrapers, and retouch tools. The high frequency of LCTs indicates that perhaps they were introduced to the site from outside. And the isolated LCTs are also found distributed at low densities across the landscape, which suggests some preferential curation and abandonment at ephemeral activity locations. Now, there's the finished tools also grade from large flakes to LCTs to hand axes. So there's no clear typological distinction. So they kind of range in a continuum. Coming to cleavers, there seems to be a deliberate selection of large and wide planks. And you see, like, there's some clear standardization of cleaver sizes, so which suggests that perhaps very standardized techniques were used for napping the flake planks used as cleavers. When we look at the cleaver blanks, most of them are conveyor blanks, which are also, these conveyor later grade into radial napping blanks. There's a clear preference for end-struck flakes, and even the conveyor flakes are found to be made on end-struck flakes. Now, although we could not find any conveyor cores, we could infer the conveyor chain of reservoir from the flakes that have been recovered from the site. So perhaps the chain of reservoir began with splitting a cobble and removing the cortex, and then removing another large flake, which was a conveyor flake. And later it was retouched on the sides and sometimes on the platform for thinning and used as a cleaver. We see that perhaps there's a continuum of chain of reservoir. The cobbles of initially split as conveyor blanks, and then perhaps the cores were later utilized further, and it resulted in radially flaked cleaver blanks. There's a low number of previous scars on the cleavers, with just a median value of 3 scars per cleaver, and even very low secondary retouch. The ventral face is largely left unretouched. However, there's an intensive secondary retouch on quartzite, which perhaps indicates greater curation due to its rock properties. We perhaps see a technomorphological continuum even among the cleavers, and perhaps they grade into other LCTs. And as I said earlier, there seems to be a definite morphological and technological standardization with remarkable uniformity in blank size and shape, method of manufacture, and retouch characteristics. Now, this is just to show you the quartzite cleavers, as I mentioned earlier, with intensive retouch. Now, when we look at the hand axes, most of the hand axes are unifacially flaked. There are very few bifacially shaped true hand axes. There's a clear preference for end-struck flakes, and sometimes these weathered tabular slabs are exploited for expedient manufacture of pointed forms. Okay, well, we also have knives and scrapers. And as I said, there seems to be a gradation of all these forms. So there's no clear typological. I hope I'm audible.
Yes, you are.
Audible?
Yes.
Yes,
Okay,
yes.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay, okay. No, I received a notification that I have been muted. Anyway, sorry. Okay. Okay. Now, the hand axe sizes also show selection of large and wide blanks. Okay. As you can see here. Okay, now when we look at the retouch on the hand axis, it is usually irregular, unstandardized, often unifacial and abrupt, with low number of scars, though they are invasive or covering, and it is mainly confined to proximal and lateral edges. There seems to be a high variability in the edge morphology of the hand axis. Very few showing fine trimming or bifacial and bilateral symmetry, though they seem to be aware of the concept, as some very nicely bifacially shaped hand axes are there in the assemblage. Now, looking at the chain of reservoir, as I said earlier, it is geared towards the production of large flakes. I mean, we have two distinct chain of reservoirs, one geared toward the production of large flakes and the other geared towards the production of small flakes. It utilizes locally available weathered core stones with varied napping strategies. The first is the Combeva method. So we have initially, we see that the chain operatoire perhaps started with Combeva planks, which were obtained by splitting cobbles and removing the cortex, and then removing a Combeva flake, which was further configured by thinning and regularization of edges into cleaver blanks. And later on, as more and more blanks were detached from this core, the upper face had graded from bifacial to preferential to multifacial cores. When we look at small flakes, we have bifacial cores as well as small cores. The bifacial cores range from simple partial, radial to discoidal cores. Now coming to the features of the technological organization, based on whatever we have seen, we can conclusively say that it is geared towards the production of large flakes, and there's a clear selection of a fine-grained quartzitic granite, mostly using weathered core stones. Small flakes constitute a distinct chain operatoire with a lack, however, of small retouch tools. Characteristically low amounts of debitage, as inferred from the number of scars and little core preparation, perhaps can be acknowledged to the nature of the napping methods, that is little core preparation. As mentioned earlier, we have a fragmented chain operatoire with underrepresentation of small artifacts and cores, and a high representation of flakes and LCTs. Few cortical or half cortical flakes. However, this does not seem to be a consequence of formation processes. We also see some variability, a high degree of planning, some high degree of cognitive skills and abilities, as seen in the core organization and the hierarchical removals, as we have seen earlier, which indicates that this tradition must have passed on through generations. Now, the LCTs, as we see, are characterized by technology, low amounts of cortex, low number of previous scars, and mostly plain striking platforms with low degree of secondary modification and little or no bifacial shaping, as most of the hand axes are unifacial large pointed tools with abrupt retouch. There's a lack of emphasis on bifacial and bilateral symmetry, though there is a familiarity with the concept. Cleaver blanks show distinctive organization and planning, predetermination and standardization based on debitage rather than fastenage. Cores show simple reduction strategies to produce predetermined suitable large flake blanks, which required little effort for further modification. The high degree of planning is reflected in the remarkable uniformity of end products, particularly in cleaver blanks, and they attest to a high degree of knowledge of fracture mechanics and high napping skills. We can conclude that the assemblage here is a large flake Acheulean, which is a distinctive characteristic of Acheulean industries in Africa, Southwest Asia, and India. Similar technological features as seen here have been also seen at other sites like Isampur, Morgaon, Chirki, Nevasa, and Ticoda. Now, based on the technology of the lithics, as well as the presence of Acheulean artifacts in the lowest stratigraphic horizon, the relic nature, and the high degree of weathering, we can infer that it is perhaps a early Acheulean assemblage. Now, this was about the lithic technology. Now, Akhilesh also asked me to kind of briefly dwell on the usewear experiments that we did on granite. So I believe that Andrew is present here. So this usewear experimentation was done under the mentorship of Andrew Ole in Spain. Now, this was done basically to kind of explore the possibility of seeing whether it can be, whether usewear is distinctive on granite, whether it can be used to distinguish the use action and the contact material. For this, systematic control of variables was used, varying both the raw material, the material used and the type of action. Mainly two actions were used, cutting and scraping, and soft and hard wood, and meat, hide, and bone. Some of the experiments were chosen for sequential analysis. Okay, now when we looked at the usewear properties after use on several raw material, when we looked at the wood cutting, so, well, this is before use. So in the first 5 minutes of work, as seen here, we do have microfracturing on the ridges and higher parts of the topography, and some conchoidal fractures, and few blocky removals. After 15 minutes of work, there's little more microfracturing and edge reduction. And after 30 minutes of work, there's heavy fracturing and blocky scar removals. And these fractures are oriented slightly oblique to the edge, as seen here. We also, okay, and weak polish also, okay. Now, when we look at scraping wood, after 5 minutes of work, it resulted in conchoidal fractures with step terminations, and these microflake scars are oriented oblique to the cutting edge. After 15 minutes, these scars, some of these scars get filled up with slight polish. Initially, we have very slight edge rounding, which increases slightly after 15 minutes. And after 30 minutes, as you can see here, the edges become heavily rounded. The scars increase, and they also get filled up with polish. And we also see some slight striations which are perpendicular to the edge, as seen here, though faintly. And after 30 minutes of work, the polish becomes extensive and well developed. Okay. Some tools were used for skinning deer also. And as you can see here, we see some conchoidal scars with step terminations, which have been subsequently covered by polish. The edges are slightly rounded. Polish is weakly developed, but smooth, dull, grainy, and pitted. And the pits are deep and circular. Now, when it comes to defleshing deer, we see few microflake scars with feather terminations, but considerable attrition and edge rounding. And we see a slight polish, which is not extensive, but limited to a few locations, and few sleeks running parallel to the edge. Now, on hide scraping tools, we did not observe much microflake scars, as they were obliterated by heavy edge rounding and polish, but severe attrition of the edge is noticed. And we have a well-developed polish with a matte or rough appearance. And Okay. On bone working tools, we see a large number of step and hinge termination scars with considerable edge rounding. The polish is fluid in character with a slightly greasy texture. Okay. Now, so this shows that perhaps usewear can be identified on granite with easily through SEM analysis. And we can even identify use actions based on the microfractures, plastic deformations, and their locations, and also the contact material. Now, this was just a preliminary study. We need to back it up with archaeological studies, which perhaps we hope to do sometime in the near future. Now, summing up, I would like to point out some issues and problem areas that I faced during this study. Now, this is a near surface site. So at the time when the study was carried out, there was like clear lack of geochronological methods to be able to provide a date of sites. However, now we do hope to kind of experiment with IRSL on feldspar and other methods to be able to provide a date to the site. Now, another problem that I faced was the varying methods of studying lithics by researchers in the area. So I suggest that there should be some standardization so as to enable comparisons. And so for this PaleoHome project, I would suggest that perhaps we can take up this issue of standardization and create an open database of Acheulean sites and lithics to be able to enable comparisons and larger scale generalizations. We can also move for three-dimensional recording and database for morphometric analysis, and also experimental replication based on the reconstruction of the Chêne operatoire, which I have already discussed here. And we can do further experimental study of granite versus quartzite fracture mechanics, coupled with more petrographic and geochemical studies, and also use wear and edge damage studies, and also a better understanding of the site context and formation processes through perhaps a small excavation and spatial analysis of site locations. Thank you everyone for your patience listening.
Great. Okay, so thank you, Neetu, Dr. Neetu, for such a wonderful the talk on Great Lalitpur. And yes, like what you discussed just now, that we really need to standardize, the entire Acheulean techno complex, not only in India but across the globe. Because lots of things are there which are still, everyone is using their regional parameters, regional things to, discuss everything. So it's really a high time we should standardize all this. With this, I think we can open the session for the discussion. There are some questions in the chat box, Neetu, Dr. Neetu, and you can have a look at them. And or do you want me to read out the questions?
No, I will have a look, don't worry.
Yeah.
So Saurabh, Saurabh asked, what do you think about the chronological timeline of the Acheulean of this region? So as I said, we do not have an exact dating of the site because of the limitations of the geochronological methods available. However, based on the technology, we can suppose that this is an early Acheulean, as I have already discussed with you, as its characteristics matches with the early Acheulean in Africa and the Levant. So that's what I can say regarding this question. I hope that suffices you, Saurabh.
Yeah. I think then there's a question from Rasika
Okay,
also. Rasika, would
Rasika,
you like
okay.
to unmute and yeah.
Yeah, Razika asked, what about this Acheulean? Is it in first or second deposition? And the type of the accumulation, whether it is fluvial or lacustrine. Okay, so it is found in regolithic context on the interfluves between the two rivers. So, and it is, well, as I showed through the site context and the formation processes based on artifact taxonomy, this does not seem to have undergone a lot of secondary secondary deposition. So this seems to be more or less primary in character. I hope this is what you wanted to know, Razika. Please unmute yourself.
Just one question. What do you think at the first you mentioned erosion landscape? For this reason, I ask you about this first or second
so
deposit.
erosion is because of it's located on the foot slopes. So the erosion is mainly due to slope movement.
Is continue until now or stop?
Yes.
I understand now. Just the last question. There is no any bone in association?
Sorry, there is no?
There is no bone?
Bones? No. Unfortunately, in Indian sites, bones are rare to find because of the acidic nature of the soil.
Okay.
Wish we had more fossils. Then the picture would have been completely altered.
Okay, and now for the craftsmen of this culture or of this these tools, where you can or which species of humans you did this, if it's possible, just
So, well, as I said, we do not have any fossils in India. However, based on studies in Africa, and there is no direct association there also, but it is surmised that this Acheulean is associated with Homo erectus.
Okay. In sensu lato or in straight? Okay, but if you can compare it with the other Acheulean in the world, for example, in African context or European, where you can put this Acheulean or this comportment or this behavior.
Okay. So if you look at its characteristics match more with the African Acheulean as well as with the early Acheulean in the Levant. Well, it is not. It is quite different from the European Acheulean, as far as I am aware. Although my knowledge of European Acheulean is quite limited, maybe Andrew can talk more about that. So it is kind of, it is more or less, it is based on a large flake production. So it is, as Sharon calls it, it's a large flake Acheulean, which is, we do not have really like the earliest industries in Africa. We do not have very we still need to kind of understand the technological organization more fully, although there recent studies do point to a lot of variability there. But based on whatever publications we have seen, it is quite similar to Pennenge, Olorgesailie, and Isimila and other African industries, and also GBY.
Okay, I'll just pitch in. There are three more questions there, and I think we can take just this one.
So what is the predominant raw material used in the LCT production? So, well, as I said, this is locally weathered core stones of granite, and very few quartzites LCTs are also there. Okay. 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 Can we infer anything about the social structure of the species? Well, it's very difficult to know how many people would have inhabited the site, because we really don't know the time frame which the site occupied. But yeah, we can infer from the technological organization that the hominins had high cognitive skills, and there seems to be some kind of mode of transmission of knowledge. Otherwise, these highly organized and planned LCT blanks would not have been possible. Oh,
I think we
Can we
can take
conclude?
only one more question. Yeah.
Okay. What factors are responsible for predominance of cleavers in central India? Well, it would be very difficult for me to answer this question, but I guess it is also the the presence of suitable core stones from which you can easily remove large flake blanks. And so perhaps that's the reason why cleavers were more predominant than bifaces, because cleavers need very few napping stages, and they can be easily used as sharp cutting tools.
Okay. So I think that's it for today. I think Razika has one last question. Maybe we can just take it in 1 minute. Yeah.
Okay. We did not try percussion or digging with LCTs. Okay, so that's one thing which we may expect to do in the future. Thank you, Razika. So our usewear experiments were very limited in nature, just to test the suitability of the rock for usewear.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, Varun, yes.
Okay, Varun, yeah, you can go. There's one more question actually in between. If bones were absent at the site, can it be concluded that the people were vegetarian?
Okay, so it reminds me of a very oft quoted phrase by Dennell. Absence cannot be counted as a mark for the presence of certain characteristics. So absence of bones cannot lead to the conclusion that the people were vegetarians. That's all that we can say.
More arguments, please.
Sorry, Razika?
More arguments. If it's possible to give us some arguments about the last supposition.
Sorry, please repeat, Razika.
If it's possible to give us some or more arguments about what did you say now about your last supposition?
Okay.
Yeah, please.
So
Thank you.
Varun asked whether the absence of bones can indicate vegetarianism. Well, in India, which is largely vegetarian as of now, we would like to think that the Acheulean people were also vegetarian.
Yeah.
But we currently do not have evidence to prove it. So based on the absence of evidence, we
It's not
cannot
an
say that the
evidence.
people, yeah.
Yeah, I understand. Thank you.
Okay, Varun had some question. I'm unmuting him. So just last question and then, yeah. Varun, you can unmute yourself.
Hello, Dr. Neetu. Firstly, congratulations on a very nice session here. So I wanted to ask about the use of raw materials and the technological aspect that you mentioned. Like you said that according to the statistics that you did, it technologically belongs to the early Acheulean. So over the past few years, I have also been working on the Acheulean on the western margins of the Vindhyan ranges in around the Bundi and Bhilwara districts of Rajasthan. So the Acheulean is more class based. Like you get to see like giant Acheulean hand axes and cleavers, etc., and large cutting tools. So and at your site, you mentioned that the large cutting tools are made up of granite. They are predominantly made up of granite. So do you think that the size of the artifacts and the technology that does it depend on the raw material that has been used, and how does it actually like vary in between the sites? You also mentioned that we need to standardize the technological aspect across the Indian Acheulean as well as around the world. So what are your views on it, and how do you go about it?
Okay. So, well, as I mentioned, we have not carried out any experimentation on the different raw materials to be able to conclusively say anything. But whatever evidence we have from various sites, based on that, we can say that yes, definitely, raw material does affect the nature of the artifacts. So, as at Singhi Talao, also you have mostly hand axes and perhaps very few cleavers.
Yes.
And even Atirampakkam is very different from Lalitpur. But when we look at most of these central Indian sites, Bhimbejka, Trikoda, Lalitpur, and also the Deccan upland sites of Morgaon, Chirki, they are mostly geared towards cleaver blank production, though you do have hand axes also.
True. Yes.
Isampur, you have Isampur, since it is also made on Isampur has a wide variety of raw material, including limestone. So you do have a large number of very large hand axes. So yes, we can say that perhaps raw material does limit constrain the kind of constrain the kind of LCTs that can be produced, but maybe we still need to carry out some more experimental studies and back it up with more comparative studies of assemblages across India and the globe to be able to conclusively say anything about this.
True. For example, if you see the sites in the central Narmada Valley, in which the Narmada Palaeoanthropology project has been going on, you get to see high level of standardization within the assemblages. But if you morphologically look at the assemblages, they reflect very crude flaking. They're not like very well refined, but they reflect standardization. So that's why it's one of the questions that I'm trying to work on, whether it is the impact of raw materials, or whether it was a different chain operatoire which was adopted by the hominins. So yeah, but
yeah, I think
it was
a joint effort by many of us would perhaps be able to answer this question.
Sure. Yes.
Okay. Wonderful questions, wonderful discussion. Thank you so much, everyone, for this great session. And thank you, Dr. Neetu, for agreeing to come on Paleo Hope and giving such a wonderful talk. Thank you so much, everyone. And we have our next talk already in line with a very fascinating next ECR who is doing his work in Africa. So stay tuned with Paleo Hope for more updates and details, and we'll get back to you soon. Razika?
Thank you, Dr. Neetu. Thank you for the AppCom team and for the participant to share your experience about the Acheulean in India, okay, because it's we are now we are just looking for African and European, and now another continent like India. Give us some information, or not information, but a big chapter of this culture. And it's so important to collaborate and to stay with us, African people, in order to do this approximation or this to correlate with us. Thank you so much.
Thank you everyone for the patient hearing.
Okay. Bye everyone. Take care.
Bye. Ciao, ciao.